Welcome to Dropping at the Movies. We've just seen Coco.
We've seen Coco
by Pixar, which is a story about a 12-year-old Mexican lad called Miguel, who wants to be a musician, but his family for years and years for generations, has banned music because his great-great-grandfather abandoned them to pursue his musical dreams and play music to the world, and his great-great-grandmother said, no more music.
Yes.
And through the generations, no music, and they've all been shoemakers instead. Mm. And he's expected to go into the family business, but he wants to play music. And there's this great musician called Ernesto de la Cruz, who he has a shrine to him. This is the most famous musician in the world, and oh my God, it turns out that Ernesto de la Cruz, the world's greatest musician, is his great-great-grandfather. And he wants to play at the Dia de los Muertos thing. And so Dia de los Muertos is the Mexican Day of the Dead, where you put out a sort of display of photos of your family, and then their spirits or their ghosts.
And you throw flowers so that they can find their way back to you, and you can find their way then to them, so it creates a trail.
Yeah, and
between the worlds.
And they can come back and visit you, at least in the way it's portrayed by the film. And then so Miguel ends up, through one way or another, being sort of cursed into spending the night in the land of the dead, and having to get his family's blessing so he can go back.
Yes, and his family refuses to bless him or makes a condition of the blessing that he never play music again.
That's right. These are his ancestors, the ghosts of his ancestors in the land of the dead.
Yeah, so the film's theme is actually, about following your dream and, the value of being an artist, but also the importance of family support and family solidarity, and that family should be a place where you can achieve your dreams, not a place that prevents you from achieving them.
Right. So that's as much as we'll say before getting into spoiler territory. I suppose the other thing is, I absolutely adored it.
I loved it.
I loved it to bits. Did you cry?
No.
I cried.
Did you?
Yeah. And if you hadn't been sitting next to me, I would have cried a lot more.
Oh, then feel free.
And a lot less guardedly, because I knew that you'd take the myth.
I love having a good laugh at people crying.
That's the problem. I actually felt like you sitting next to me ruined it.
You see,
because you would have taken the myth.
I'm like that family that prevents you from doing
You
things.
You are. But I had a good cry, and I think it's Pixar's best film.
I loved it. I think it's one of the best films of the year. It looks beautiful. Yes. And it looks like... I think the important thing to say is this is the first of those animated children's films, big budget Pixar Disney, that I at least can remember that is Hispanic, right? Well, specifically Mexican, but just kind of broadening the picture. I can't remember any other instance, which is so bizarre when you consider that something like 40% of the population now, or some absurdly huge number, has Spanish as its second language and, kind of originates from Latin American cultures in one form or another. It's about time, right? And actually what these filmmakers do, I think, is really beautiful. They draw on, mariachi culture and 1940s Mexican cinema. There are direct quotations of Maria Felix and Dolores del Rio films, particularly of Enamorada with the mariachi singing and she goes in the balcony. Yeah, but all of that kind of cinematic culture is integrated into this narrative. So the child wants to be, or thinks his ancestor is, this kind of famous, film star who sang, right? So there's like black and white animation incorporated into the rest of the film. And actually it is... when Roland Barthes said that kind of, works are tissues of quotations from every part of culture, you actually kind of see it in this film in the way that it's embroidered, right? That kind of, it's drawing on kind of bits from, Mexican cinema and music and, traditions and, it's kind of, I thought costumes. The palette, color palette that's used in this film is so unlike anything that you've seen in these films before.
The closest thing I can think of to a previous kind of big American animation that drew on Hispanic or Latino culture would be Puss in Boots, which is not saying very much.
Yes, though actually that's something I had forgotten that. Yes, Antonio Banderas made a huge hit with that. I actually still remember his pronunciation. Puss in Boots. That's probably a very bad imitation, but in my head I remember it.
Yeah.
Actually, I took my nephew to see it, I think.
The one thing I'd say about the look of this film, along with everything you say about the way it draws on Mexican culture and visuals, is I think this is the first animated 3D film that I've seen that looks like, for want of a better phrase, a real film. There have been so many beautiful, beautiful 3D animated movies by Pixar and DreamWorks and all these other companies, but they all still look like cartoons ultimately, no matter how realistic they get. And there's something about this, the shot compositions and the way that the camera moves and the use of shallow focus and the way the camera kind of shakes and the editing. This feels like, and you're never in any doubt that it's animated. The characters have still got cartoony faces and half of them are skeletons, but it feels like a real film. It's actually kind of amazing. The first half of WALL-E had that as well, when it was set on Earth before they got into space. It really drew on subtleties of workings of cameras and the way that cameras capture images and the way they move subtly and look in very realistic ways, and that really captured it. But this is the whole way through. I thought it was kind of incredible, actually. I think it's an astonishingly beautiful visual work.
I mean, from the beginning, when you have all of these scenes that are constructed to you through these cutouts that are really meant to be wash hanging, but that nonetheless introduce you to the whole story, and they're all kind of very intricate and hollowed out and of varying colors, and it's just very beautiful. It's like, you start the film in a place of beauty, really. It's just wonderful to see. And, I think there are moments like, there was a moment where the grandmother, I think, begins to sing. And I think it's Chavela Vargas's voice, who's a very famous Mexican singer. Kind of Almodovar uses her her voice in some of his films. And I just got chills down my spine. It's like, her voice has that effect on me, really. It's in that voice that the grandmother who's abandoned sings, when she has her big number.
The great-great-grandmother.
Yeah, and she's got that croaky, slightly masculine, kind of deep voice. Yeah, I found it very beautiful. And it was a spine-tingling moment.
Yeah. The use of language is very interesting because the film is ultimately still for English-speaking audiences, the American audiences. So it's English language, but Spanish is kind of dropped in. So some songs are sung in Spanish. There are certain lines that, like Dia de los Muertos, is always said in Spanish. Yeah, things like this. It's kind of bilingual.
Yeah, I was going to say Spanglish or something, right?
Right. But I mean, the thing is, were this film kind of in real life, quote unquote, everyone would just be speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
So it has its cake and eats it slightly, and it approaches this kind of authenticity. I mean, in other words, if it had no consideration of that, they would just say Land of the Dead and Day of the Dead in English.
Yes.
They would never care.
Actually, I think it's trying to speak the way, that Mexicans in particular and Hispanics in general probably speak English in the United States.
Yeah.
So you would say Días de los Muertos and not Day of the Dead. And you
would switch back and forth.
Yeah, and switch back and forth and mix the language. And I love that, actually. And I love the way that they capture cultural ways of being. So like what and I'm not Mexican and I'm not American, but the way that the grandmother kissed the grandson.
Yeah.
That's the way my grandmother used to, kiss me, right? So I loved all of those details and touches. Really, I think it's beautiful, and I loved the whole way that the world of the dead is represented. With the bridges of flowers and then all of those stories and and then the wonderful jokes that they make out of like the skeleton's bodies being rearranged.
Yeah. Well, that's a kind of really classic cartoony joke, but they do it. They keep on reinventing, inventing new things out of it.
Yes.
And it's fantastic, and they keep everything so fresh.
And I love the way that they draw on film history. So I love that there was like allusions to the Busby Berkeley numbers and the Carmen Miranda numbers.
They make such a great joke out of that with the towards the end where the fight is over the photo of the great-great-grandfather, because there's this thing about you have to keep the photo. The photo has to be there on the display. I forget the name of the display. It has to be there so that he can be remembered and be able to make the journey on the Day of the Dead back to the real world and see his family. And the fight ends up being a kind of on stage during a performance. So it becomes this tango and this dance and a song between the great-great-grandmother and Ernesto, and they're fighting over the photograph, but they dance to sort of disguise it, and also there's the security guys in kind of formation, in like a sort of like say Busby Berkeley type.
It's wonderful.
It's really inventive.
I think it's really it would make my top 10 of the year. This film, it's just endlessly inventive. It's really kind of in its own way complex. It's visually stunning. It's actually kind of very cineliterate, and kind of the jokes are terrific, and I think it is genuinely moving, and also I think it's thematically kind of interesting, right? It does have something important and kind of told with nuance about kind of one struggles with families where on the one hand they want to protect you or whatever, but also they want you to be like they are. They won't let you be yourself, right? And there's always kind of that tension between protecting and imprisoning you. And I think the film kind of...
And actually, thematically, it's constantly evolving, because I assumed certain things. It starts off with the family being very constricting, and Miguel wants to break out and be a musician and be free. But of course, you understand that also there's the family are a unit, and they're strong for that reason. And as the film, as the plot moves on, the themes are reframed and slightly changed, subtly and gradually. They are balanced and rebalanced throughout the film as the plot changes and as revelations come out as to who people are and actually what happened in the past. Then the characters change. So particularly Imelda, the great-great-grandmother, who has this vile hatred of music and hatred of her partner who left her. But then she comes out, no, I love music, and that was the problem. I had to make this sacrifice, and that reframes that theme and the theme of family. And then when she kind of re-falls in love or rekindles her love with her ex-partner, because it turns out he was murdered and that's why he never came back, then it changes again. And so it's not as simple as this is the theme and it's consistent the whole way through.
Yes, but it is anchored in a kind of a consistency, because actually it's not the great-grandmother who's like the great it's the grandmother,
Well, in real life it is, because
so
she's
in real
doing
life
as she's told.
And the grandmother doesn't change until the very last second. So it's the it's the great grandmother, that is the one who does change. But anyway, I think your point is an important.
That's
one.
what I said. The great grandmother, Imelda.
No, I realize that. What I'm trying to establish is that kind of the person who prohibits everything, the matriarch in the real world, actually doesn't change, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I think that's interesting, because actually the film provides like a kind of a structural kind of tension between one world and the other. So, in one, things are constantly shifting. In the world of the dead, like nothing remains still. But, there's still the beginning of the film where actually these structures are still in place, right? And overhang the rest of the film, because the boy has to return to those.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So I think that's it's very interesting structure.
That is interesting, but I did feel because the grandmother's insistence on no music, that comes from her grandmother Imelda. Then when the film engages with Imelda and then she starts engaging with Miguel, I felt like, I thought it seemed reasonably clear to me that when she changed, as I predicted she might, that change would kind of propagate through ultimately. So, but I mean, the grandmother doesn't have the option to change her mind before that because most of the film is not in the real world.
Yes.
So,
but actually, I think what's also interesting is that the reason that the grandmother changes her mind is actually not because of her grandmother in the world of the dead. It's actually because
of her mother.
Of her mother.
Yeah. So the Coco of the title is the grandmother's mother.
Yes.
Who is this old lady in the real world who is clearly losing her memory, and is just kind of sat still, wrinkled in a chair, not doing very much, talking occasionally. She's not like senile, but she's kind of very still and on her last legs. So her father was the one who left them years ago. And the revelation comes out that her father sang this song to her, Remember Me, which was just for her. And when Miguel returns to the real world in the morning and sings her that song, she comes alive. And she remembers it, and so it's not just, and that's what convinces the grandmother that music is okay again, because music has revived her mother.
That's right.
And reinvigorated her. And music, and in the spirit world, in the land of the dead, what it means is that music literally saves the life of the great grandfather, because that song is what she remembers of him, and him being remembered is what keeps him alive in the land of the dead.
Yes.
So this music literally saves a life.
Well, let's say a little bit about the music, because as we came out, I was humming it in a way that, I couldn't remember the songs of La La Land. Though eventually, after listening to the soundtrack many times, I did. But this is very hummable music.
Remember me. Remember me. Mind you, that's the only one I do remember.
Yes.
That's essential song. It's Poco Loco as well, which I don't remember.
Yes. Well, I remember that it's like, typically kind of Mexican whoops and shifts. But I can't remember that either. But anyway, the music is very pleasant, very enjoyable, and works very, very well.
Right, yeah.
So, the film is, of course, like these animated films often are, it's a musical.
But it's a musical where everything is framed in everyone has a reason to sing their songs. They're all diegetic. It's not like La La Land where you're jumping into songs from out of nowhere.
That's true.
It's framed for everyone. It's about playing music and about singing on stage. And
yes. So it's not
when
like
people sing, they have reasons to.
Yes. So it's not like Beauty and the Beast for teapots.
Right. Exactly.
But nonetheless, it's a
great.
musical.
It's just kind of absolutely. It's a musical, and it's got beautiful music, and it's very rich and moving music.
Anyway,
it's also got loads of good jokes about Frida Kahlo, which I think actually.
Oh, that was wonderful.
So Frida Kahlo is one of the defining figures of Mexico.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if I can think of a more defining one.
Well, yes, a
more well-known kind of.
I would say somebody like, Maria Felix or Dolores del Rio. They're all quoted in this film. They're all visualized, but arguably the most famous image is that of Frida Kahlo. Yeah,
and I would say in the English-speaking world, Frida Kahlo is much more well-known than the other figures that I think you talk about.
Okay.
But do you think the film slightly does her a disservice by not really taking her very seriously?
No,
it shows her to be a kind of outrageous flamenco-y, we shall have fire, darling.
I loved her.
I loved her, but
and
she's
I
a figure
love
of fun
the jokes,
in the film.
And I loved the way that she's so visually easily recognized, that she's so iconographic. It means that people can try to pass as her. They disguise themselves as her, and then there are jokes about the monobrow falling off.
Yeah, it's illegal to fake a monobrow in the land of the dead.
I thought that was all marvellous.
I loved it, to be honest. I'm slightly splitting hairs with that one, but I did feel like she was purely a figure of fun in the film.
She was endearingly poked fun at, very lovingly poked fun at.
Yeah, I think that's
right. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've run out of time because this is a short podcast.
Got to get going.
But we highly recommend it. I think it really is one of the top films of the year.
It's absolutely astonishing. I loved it. I was surprised that there didn't seem to be a 3D screening of it. It's all in 2D.
I didn't look.
Which was surprising to me because I would have thought it is in 3D as well.
I don't know.
But anyway, it looked beautiful.
Yes.
So, Eavesdropping at the Movies is on Facebook and Twitter. At Eavesdrop... was it? At Eavesdrop Movies on Twitter. Eavesdropping at the Movies on Facebook.
On SoundCloud.
eavesdroppingatthemovies.com is the blog. We're on iTunes. You can email us. eavesdropping at the movies at gmail.com. So, and all of that.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere and nowhere, baby. That's where we're at.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Bye-bye. Coco Loco. Yeah, I'm recording it on the phone.
All right.
I just thought something else. We're in the car on the way to the cinema. I just thought something else.
How it's like the Wizard of Oz.
I just thought something else, which is it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like, and I think it's quite deliberate, which is that it's about you you go off into this different world, this spectral or magical realm for a brief period of time. Then you wake up back in the real world and life having changed, which is what it is, and with new knowledge and when he's in the land of the dead, or when she's in Oz, it's all about get to the wizard, or get to Ernesto de la Cruz, and he ends up with people in tow, and it's a big kind of chase to get there. And then when he gets there, what does he find out? He's a fraud.
Yes, and they're given a deadline.
Yes.
He has to return by a certain time, by dawn.
Yeah. And there's a magical process by which you return to the real world.
That's right. And there are all these magical creatures as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Which were beautiful. The big cat thing. Oh, it's a great little film. All right, let's go.